The first sign was the smell. Not her perfume, the absence of it. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and nothing else. I stood frozen in the doorway, sweat still clinging to my back from the run, earbuds still dangling around my neck. Then I saw the note. A single envelope on the kitchen table, centered like a final verdict. My name on the front. Josh. I opened it with numb fingers. The letter was 3 pages, front and back, but I didn't get past the first line. By the time you read this, I'll be in Portland. Probably unpacking. Probably not thinking about you. I dropped the page and ran to the bedroom. Closet? Empty. Dresser drawers? Half gone. Even the mug I got her in Italy, the one she insisted was hers, gone. My mind scrambled to make it mean less than it did. She's upset. She's just making a point. She'll be back. But then I opened our bank app. Balance, $312.14. She drained it. Weeks ago. My hands started shaking. I checked the transaction history, looking for some kind of mistake. There wasn't one. Just a series of quiet withdrawals, transfers to a private account. Then I saw a name, M. Riley. I had no idea who that was. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called her sister. She told me not to talk to you, she said, flat. Said you'd try to turn this into her fault. She left me. She didn't leave you, Josh. She escaped you. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out sharp and cracked. I took care of her. I paid the bills. She said you lied about your brother. That stopped everything. What? She found the court records, her sister said, and now her voice had this razor-thin edge. She found out what happened with Micah. That you let him take the fall. I hung up before I could hear the rest. My lungs felt like they were collapsing. I hadn't heard Micah's name in 5 years. I opened the photo app, instinctively. Our cloud was still linked. One new photo. Her. On a beach. Laughing. Someone's hand on her thigh. His face cropped out. Not an accident. And then, just above the photo, the caption. Some people spend their whole lives running. I'm finally free. I stared at the screen. Felt something in my chest crack open. I wanted to scream. Break something. Crawl out of my own skin. Instead, I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out the old duffel I hadn't used since college. I didn't even think, just moved. Shirts. Jeans. Shoes. Passport. I needed to go. Not to a place. Just away. I opened the apartment door, bag slung over my shoulder, and froze. There, standing at the edge of the sidewalk, facing my building like he'd been waiting there all morning, was Micah. Older. Harder. Still. We locked eyes. He didn't move. Neither did I. For 5 years, I had run from that moment. And now? Now, I had nowhere left to run. Micah didn't say anything. Just stood there, hands in the pockets of a jacket that looked like it had been through several winters without a break. His eyes weren't angry. That would have been easier. They were something worse, like he'd stopped expecting anything from me a long time ago. I didn't move. I wasn't even sure I'd locked the apartment behind me. My duffel slipped a little on my shoulder, but I didn't fix it. I couldn't. Seeing him felt like watching a train wreck you caused years ago suddenly arrive at your front door, like time had folded in on itself and dropped off the damage, right on schedule. He nodded once. You planning to keep walking? Are you gonna say something? I couldn't read his tone. I hadn't heard his voice in 5 years, and now it sounded like a stranger's. He looked thinner, more worn down. I couldn't tell if he was struggling or just surviving. I didn't know you were out, I said. I hated how weak it sounded. For months ago. He tilted his head. You would have known. If you'd answered one of my letters. I looked down at the sidewalk. There were things I could have said. That I didn't get them. That I was busy. That I wasn't ready. All of it would have been true. And none of it would have mattered. Micah exhaled and looked past me, toward the apartment building. She's gone, huh? I didn't answer. He laughed once. No smile. Just sound. You always were better at leaving before people could. I winced, but I deserved it. I let the silence sit between us until it felt unbearable. Then, because I didn't know what else to do, I turned and walked back inside. He followed. I didn't invite him, and he didn't ask. The apartment felt hollow, like something that had already started collapsing. He glanced around, probably recognizing the absence of things more than anything present. He pointed to the table where the letter had been. That her goodbye? I nodded. Cold, he said. Then he walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it again. You got beer? No, I said. I don't really drink anymore. Since when? Since it stopped helping. He leaned against the counter. You still running? Yeah. He nodded like that made sense. Then he looked me in the eye for the first time since we got inside. You didn't show up. I opened my mouth, but he cut me off. You promised you would. I told them you would. I was a minor. You were the only witness who could have said it wasn't me who threw the first punch. I swallowed, throat dry. I froze. No, you left. He was right. I bought a bus ticket the night before the hearing and never went back. I convinced myself it would blow over, that he'd get probation or community service. I didn't even check. I didn't want to know what price he paid so I wouldn't have to face my own cowardice. I thought maybe you'd show up after Mom died, he added, softer. But you didn't even call. I sat down on the edge of the couch. I didn't know what to say. You didn't have to say anything. You just had to be there. That silence between us started to swell again, but this time I didn't let it. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope she'd left, and handed it to him. He looked at it, then back at me. You want me to read your Dear John letter? No. I want you to see what she said. Because she found out about you. About what I didn't do. He didn't take it. Just nodded slowly. So she left because she figured out you're a liar. She left because I was a coward. Micah gave me a look that wasn't pity, but close to it. It doesn't matter why people walk away, Josh. What matters is what you do once they're gone. He walked toward the door. I thought he might just leave again, that this was all he came for, just to see if I was still the same. Instead, he turned back. I have a meeting tomorrow. Job interview. Factory out near Belmont. That's good. He shrugged. Not good. Just necessary. Then he looked at me with something almost like curiosity. You working? Not right now. So nothing's holding you here. He didn't wait for an answer. Just opened the door. I'm staying at the Pineview Motel. Room 12. If you want to talk, really talk, you'll show up. If not, don't worry. I'm not going to write you any more letters. Then he was gone. I stood in the quiet. I could have packed the rest of my bag. I could have thrown her ring away. I could have gone for another run. Instead, I sat on the floor, in the center of a life that had finally collapsed in on itself, and realized something I'd been avoiding for years. The longer you run from the truth, the more it costs to come back. I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch with the same shirt stuck to my back from the run, watching the ceiling like it might break open and drop answers into the room. Every creak from the hallway made me flinch. I kept thinking Micah might come back, but he didn't. Around 4 in the morning, I got up and made coffee I didn't want, poured it into a mug that used to be hers, and drank it because it gave me something to do. I didn't call in sick because there wasn't anyone to call. I'd already used my unpaid leave, and no one had bothered to follow up. I hadn't quit outright, but I knew it was only a matter of time before my name quietly disappeared from the system. That morning, I let it happen. I threw the empty mug into the sink, grabbed my bag, and left. I told myself I'd just walk, that I wasn't going to the motel, but when I reached the edge of Belmont and saw the sign for Pineview flickering like it hadn't been maintained in years, I turned in anyway. The air inside the front office smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. A woman behind the counter barely looked up from her phone as I stepped in. I asked if Micah was still there. She didn't answer, just reached behind her and tapped the key hanging on a wooden board. Room 12. I didn't knock right away. I stood outside the door, watching the numbers like they might change. When I finally raised my hand and knocked, I half hoped there'd be no answer. But I heard movement. The lock clicked. He opened the door halfway. You came. You said you wouldn't write again. That's what it took? I didn't answer. He stepped aside and let me in. The room was barely more than a bed, a chair, and a small table with a single lamp. A suitcase set open on the floor. A few shirts folded next to it. I noticed a stack of notebooks on the table, and on top of it, a parole officer's card. He followed my eyes but didn't say anything about it. Instead, he picked up a half-eaten sandwich from the table and offered it to me. I shook my head. I thought about not answering the door, he said. Just to see if you'd keep knocking. I wasn't sure I would. But you did. Yeah. He took a bite, wiped his hands on a napkin, and sat on the edge of the bed. You want to know what prison's like? No. He nodded. That's fair. I sat in the chair by the lamp. It creaked under my weight. The tension in the room settled like humidity, heavy, hard to breathe through, but expected. I stared at the notebooks. You writing? Sometimes. About what? Stuff I remember. Stuff I want to forget. You wouldn't like it. I leaned forward. You don't know what I'd like. You didn't care enough to find out. He looked at me like he wasn't trying to hurt me, just stating something flat and obvious. You think what you did was a single moment. It wasn't. You leaving kept happening. Every day you stayed gone, it happened again. I know. No, you don't. You think because you feel guilty, that's the same thing as making it right. I'm trying. He stood up, walked over to the sink, and ran the tap. You can't fix 5 years of silence with one apology. I'm not trying to fix it. I just want to start. Start what? A brotherhood revival tour. I want to be in your life again. He turned the water off and dried his hands slowly. You know what the worst part was? I waited. I needed you more after you left than I did during the trial. When I got out, I couldn't get a job. No one wanted someone with assault on their record, even if I didn't throw the punch. You know who helped me? Some guy I met inside who barely spoke English. He gave me a lead at a factory. I've been sleeping in motels and working nights to save enough to get a place. I haven't had a real home since Mom died. You were supposed to be family. You were supposed to be my person. He said it so quietly I almost missed it. I stood. Let me help you now. He shook his head. You want to help because your life just fell apart. Not because you're ready. You don't even know what helping means. You think showing up one time makes up for everything. I can't go back. No, you can't. But you can stop making this about you. I swallowed that. Let it burn its way down. Then he picked up one of the notebooks and held it out. You want to be here? Read this. Read who I became while you were pretending I didn't exist. I took the notebook. You get one chance, he said. Not to fix the past. To prove you're not still the same person who left. I opened it and started reading. The notebook wasn't poetic. It didn't try to be. Micah's handwriting was uneven, sometimes sharp, sometimes faded, like he'd written some of it in the dark or when he couldn't stop shaking. The first page wasn't dated. It just said, day after sentencing. He didn't show. Every paragraph that followed stripped away the version of him I'd kept in my mind. The kid who got in trouble, who had a temper, who always made things harder than they had to be. In the notebook, that kid was gone. Replaced by someone who spent 6 months in a juvenile holding facility before being transferred to adult corrections. Someone who got jumped 3 times in his first week and learned not to fight back because the guards didn't break it up, they just waited for it to end. He wrote about food that made him sick, about how the lights never fully went off, about waking up to someone screaming in another cell and not knowing if they were dying or just dreaming. He wrote about a counselor who made them list one thing each week they wanted to do when they got out. His list didn't change for 4 years. It said, see my brother. Punch him. Then maybe talk. Micah didn't speak while I read. He paced the room, opened the mini fridge, closed it again, picked up his phone, put it down without unlocking it. I reached the last page and looked up. He was standing by the window, arms crossed, looking out like the parking lot had something to offer. I set the notebook on the table. He turned around. So? I don't know what to say. Good. That's better than pretending you do. You've been through more than I realized. You didn't want to realize anything. That's why you left. I'm not making excuses. You don't have to. I already know them. He grabbed a small brown envelope from his suitcase and tossed it on the table. I hesitated. Go ahead, he said. I opened it. Inside were 2 documents. One was a job offer, conditional employment from a factory just outside the city. The other was a lease application, and signed. I got approved for a place, he said. Small. Furnished. It's not much, but it's mine. You're really doing it. I've been doing it, he said, with something that didn't sound like pride. What I need now isn't someone clapping from the sidelines. What do you need? Someone who shows up when it's not convenient. That landed hard. He sat down, the weight of everything in his shoulders. I went back to Mom's old house last week. Just to see it. They sold it. Yeah. New paint. Big SUV in the driveway. No trace of us. I kept my hands folded. He was building up to something. There's 1 box left in storage, he said. From her stuff. I couldn't open it. Why? He looked at me like I should already know. Because it's the last thing. Once it's gone, there's nothing left to pretend we're still part of. I didn't ask what was in it. I could tell he wasn't sure. I just said, where is it? Downtown. Unit C-14. I paid 3 months in advance. After that, they tossed whatever's left. I'll go with you. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I am. He leaned back. Tomorrow morning. I'll meet you there at 10. I stood to leave, but stopped with my hand on the door. You want a ride to the interview? He shook his head. No. I need to walk in on my own. I nodded and left the room. As I stepped outside, the air felt sharp, like it hadn't adjusted to the season yet. I didn't go home. I walked to the train station and sat on the bench until the sun started to rise. I thought about the box, about the last time I saw Mom in the hospital. Micah hadn't made it in time. I hadn't even called him until she was already unconscious. He'd held that truth quietly, without asking me to admit it. That was worse than yelling. I remembered what he said earlier: you don't fix guilt. You carry it. Maybe that was the point. Some weight wasn't meant to be dropped. It was meant to shape how you moved going forward. The storage facility looked like a place that hadn't seen light in years. Rows of corrugated metal doors stretched down narrow corridors, each one identical, anonymous. Micah arrived right at 10, dressed in the same jacket from the day before, a rolled-up sheet of paper in his hand. He didn't speak at first, just nodded and walked past me, motioning for me to follow. The key was already in his grip. Unit C-14. He unlocked it without hesitation but didn't open it. He stared at the handle like something on the other side could still hurt us. Then he pulled it up, slow and steady, the sound scraping against the track like it didn't want to move. Inside was one cardboard box. Nothing else. We stood in silence. Micah crouched beside it, tapped the edge of the lid, then stopped. You sure you want to do this? I nodded, but I didn't move. He peeled the flaps back. The first thing inside was a framed picture: Mom, us, and Dad at that state park with the broken fountain. It had to be from before everything cracked. Before Dad left. Before Micah started getting in fights. Before I decided the best way to survive was to disappear. He set the photo aside. Underneath were papers, birth certificates, school reports, some bills with her handwriting on them. I reached in and pulled out a sealed envelope with Micah's name. He stared at it, but didn't touch it. I handed it to him. He hesitated, then opened it. She'd written it in blue pen, 2 pages, no corrections. I didn't read over his shoulder. I watched his face. He didn't blink much. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he stood, grabbed the box, and walked it outside without saying anything. I followed. When we reached the curb, he placed the box down beside a dumpster and sat on the concrete. I sat beside him. She said she knew I blamed you, he said. Said she hoped I'd let it go eventually. You don't have to. She didn't mean let it go like forget it. She meant stop letting it run everything. I looked straight ahead. What else did she say? She said you were scared. Not cruel. Not selfish. Just scared. That made it worse for her. Watching you turn yourself into someone small so you didn't have to feel anything. He pulled out the letter again. She said, hurt doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It just waits until you're alone. We sat with that. People passed on the sidewalk, but no one paid attention to us. I wanted to say something useful. Something that mattered. I didn't have it. Micah finally spoke again. I didn't get the job. What happened? Interview was fine. Background check came back. They said they'd call. They didn't. Want me to talk to someone? I've got a few connections with the transit department. It's not a lot, but he cut me off. I'm not asking you to fix it. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck. You think people change? I don't know. I think they can decide to act differently. I think sometimes that's the best we can do. He nodded. I believed you were better than me. That's what I used to think. Now I think we were both just scared in different ways. I didn't argue. He stood, picked the box back up, and walked it to my car. Take it. I can't keep it, but I don't want it thrown out. You sure? Yeah. I opened the trunk. As I set the box inside, something slid loose and landed at my feet. A folded piece of notebook paper. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was a note from me, dated the week after I left for college. Short. I'd forgotten I even wrote it. Don't let Mom go through your stuff. There's cash under the floorboard. Don't be an idiot. I'll call soon. I handed it to Micah. He stared at it, then let out a breath that sounded more tired than angry. You never called. I didn't think you'd want me to. Then you didn't know me at all. We stood like that for a moment. I didn't know what came next, but something had shifted. Not resolved. Not fixed. Just different. Like we were both out of excuses. Micah glanced at the trunk one more time. If you're going to keep that box, don't just store it again. Open it when it gets hard. Make yourself remember who she thought you were. Then he walked away without waiting for a response. The next morning started with a knock at my door I wasn't expecting. I hadn't seen my landlord in months, but there he was, standing in the hallway with a clipboard and the kind of expression people use when they've already made up their minds. I didn't invite him in. He didn't wait to be invited. Rent's overdue. Again, he said, stepping past me and into the kitchen like he owned the place. You were supposed to be out by the 15th. I thought I had until the end of the month. You thought wrong. You got 3 days. He dropped a folded notice on the counter, turned, and walked back out. That was it. No conversation. No warning. Just consequences. I stood there, holding the edge of the countertop to stop myself from flipping the whole thing over. The place had already been gutted emotionally, her things gone, the air different, but now it was becoming something worse. Unlivable. I packed what I could in less than an hour. It turned out I didn't own much. A few clothes, some shoes, old chargers I never threw away. The box from storage sat by the door. I looked at it for a while. Then I grabbed it and left. I didn't have a plan. I drove for almost an hour without direction, just trying to outpace the feeling that I had nothing to go back to. Eventually, I pulled into a church parking lot, mostly empty except for a few faded cars. I wasn't religious. Never had been. But I remembered that Mom used to sit in the back row sometimes when she didn't want to be seen. I got out, carried the box inside, and sat in the very back. A janitor was vacuuming near the altar. He didn't look up. I opened the box and started going through the rest of it. There were more photos. A few of Dad, which surprised me. She never talked about him after he left. There was an old wallet with a bus pass inside, expired. Receipts from the grocery store. Notes in the margins of a Bible she probably never read for doctrine, just comfort. At the very bottom, folded in half and brittle at the edges, was a piece of paper in my handwriting. A printout of a high school essay I'd forgotten she even kept. The last page had a comment from the teacher in red pen. You don't finish the thought. Try again. That sentence hit harder than anything else in the box. The janitor came closer. He paused when he saw me. You good? He asked, pointing to the box. Yeah, I said. Just going through something. He leaned on the vacuum. Most people are. Nobody shows up here just to pass time. I nodded but didn't say more. You lose someone? He asked. Not exactly. Sometimes it's not about losing someone. Sometimes it's about realizing you lost yourself. I looked up at him. You always talk like that? He shrugged. Only when it fits. He started vacuuming again, and I kept reading. At some point, I didn't even know what I was looking for anymore. Maybe I thought if I turned the right page, I'd find a reason to believe I hadn't wasted everything. By the time I left the church, it was dark. I hadn't eaten all day. I pulled into a diner off the highway. As I slid into a booth, I noticed someone across the restaurant staring at me. She was alone, drinking coffee, and working on something with a pencil and a crumpled receipt. She caught me looking and gave a quick nod, then returned to her paper. I ordered food I didn't want and picked at it, then asked the waitress for a pen. I pulled a napkin from the dispenser and started writing. I wrote a list of every person I owed something to: answers, apologies, explanations, honesty. The list wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. Some names I hadn't said out loud in years. One of them was Micah's. I put a star next to it. I sat there a long time. The woman across the diner got up to leave, and on her way out, she paused by my table. You look like someone trying to make things right, she said. I'm trying to figure out if that's even possible. She didn't smile. It is. Just don't wait until nobody's left to hear it. Then she left. I stared at the list. Folded it. Paid the bill. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night, but I knew where I needed to go in the morning. Micah didn't open the door right away. I heard movement inside the motel room, the sound of a zipper, a drawer sliding, something dropped and picked up again. When he finally opened it, he looked different. Not rested, not relaxed, but like he'd stopped expecting the next bad thing to arrive on schedule. He had his jacket on, duffel in hand. I thought maybe he was checking out. Before I could ask, he stepped aside to let me in. The room looked almost untouched since I'd last been there, but the suitcase was zipped, and the notebooks were gone. I was about to leave, he said, closing the door behind us. Where? Don't know yet. Just not here. You going somewhere for work? No job. Just leaving. Felt like I was staying out of habit. I sat in the chair. I made a list last night. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. People I've hurt, I said. People I should have faced years ago. Long list? Long enough. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the letter Mom had written him. He held it in both hands like it was made of something that could tear too easily. He looked tired, but there was no edge in his voice. I don't know what you think happens next. Neither do I. I thought maybe I wanted you to fix everything. That if you came back, it'd somehow undo what you left behind. But it doesn't. You showing up doesn't erase what happened. It just adds something new. I'm not trying to erase anything. He nodded. Then why are you here? I reached into my jacket and took out the list. Folded, worn, creased at the corners. I handed it to him. He read a few names, then stopped when he saw his. You put a star next to mine. I didn't plan to. My pin did it without asking. He handed it back. That's not how it works. I know. I just wanted you to see it. We sat there a while. He picked up the duffel and set it on the bed, unzipped it, pulled out one of the notebooks. I've been writing letters, he said. Not for anyone to read. Just ones I never sent. To me. Some. Others were to Mom. Or to myself. The kid I used to be. Did it help? Sometimes it made things worse. But at least I stopped pretending I didn't have anything left to say. He handed me the notebook. I hesitated, then opened to a random page. It wasn't a letter. It was a list. Not of people, but of questions. The first one, what does forgiveness cost if the person who needs it is also the one who caused the damage? I closed it and handed it back. You planning to write more? I don't know. Depends what I do next. He looked around the room, then back at me. You really want to help? Yes. I don't need money. I don't need a place to crash. What I need is someone who's willing to show up when it's hard. Tell me what that looks like. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, come with me today. Where? Not far. Just somewhere I've been avoiding. He didn't explain further. We checked out of the motel and got into his car. He didn't ask to ride in mine. He drove. 15 minutes in silence. No music. No conversation. Just the sound of old tires on uneven road. We pulled into a parking lot near a community center. I'd never been there. He parked, turned off the engine, and just sat. They hold group sessions here, he said. For people who've done time. People who can't get hired, or can't talk to their families, or don't know how to start over. You been inside before? I stood at that door 4 times. Never walked in. Why not? Didn't want to sit in a room full of people who saw their failure as permanent. What changed? He looked over. You showed up yesterday. That hit harder than I expected. He got out of the car, walked to the door, then turned around and looked back. You coming? I didn't answer. I just got out and followed him in. The room smelled like dust and coffee. Rows of metal chairs faced a folding table where a man in a plain blue shirt was writing names on a clipboard. The walls were bare, except for a laminated flyer about second chance housing taped crooked above the light switch. There were maybe 9 people already seated, none of them talking, none of them looking around. Just waiting. Micah didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the clipboard, signed his name, then sat in the last row. I followed, sat next to him. He didn't look over. He didn't need to. A woman entered a minute later, carrying a plastic tub filled with files and papers, and called the room to attention. Her voice was clear and firm but didn't force authority. She introduced herself as Carla, then asked if anyone was new. 2 men raised their hands. Then Micah raised his. Name? She asked. Micah Reeves. She nodded. You here for re-entry support, peer sponsorship, or just to listen today? Micah glanced at me, then answered, all of it. She smiled slightly. Good. We start with updates. One by one, people spoke. A guy named Benny said he'd made it 3 weeks at a mechanic shop before getting fired for arguing with a customer. A woman named Dana said her landlord gave her 2 more weeks to come up with rent. Another guy, Ralph, said he'd finally seen his daughter after 6 years, but she wouldn't hug him. Nobody interrupted. Nobody tried to fix anything. They just nodded, or murmured a soft, that's rough, and waited for the next voice. When it came to Micah, he stood. I did 5 years, he said. Got out 4 months ago. Haven't stayed anywhere more than a week since. No one reacted. I've been writing about it. Not for anyone. Just for myself. Carla asked, you want to read something? Micah hesitated, then pulled a folded page from his pocket and read a paragraph about his first night back outside. Not poetic. Not dramatic. Just details. Concrete. Cold. Honest. When he finished, he sat back down. No applause. Just acceptance. Carla thanked him and moved on. At the end, she asked if anyone needed rides, clothes, food, or help with job leads. Several hands went up. She jotted notes without judgment, just routine. Then she said something that felt rehearsed but earned. Progress isn't something you see in the mirror. You feel it in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is around. Afterward, Micah waited until everyone had left before walking over to Carla. You meant that? He asked. About progress? She packed her bag. We track what the courts can't. He nodded. I don't know if I belong here. You don't have to. You just have to keep showing up. They exchanged numbers. She handed him a flyer for a local warehouse opening shifts. Then we left. Outside, the sky was overcast, and the street was quiet. Micah didn't speak until we reached the car. I don't know what I expected. You think you'll go again? Yeah. We stood there for a while. I asked if he had plans for the rest of the day. He said no. I said I didn't either. Then he said something I didn't see coming. I met someone inside, he said. Not like that. Just someone who changed how I thought about everything. His name was Oscar. He used to say, you can't move forward and hang on to the past with both hands. He meant it as advice. I took it as a dare. I leaned against the hood. You think you're ready to let go? I don't want to. But I'm tired of bleeding from things that aren't even happening anymore. I opened the trunk and pulled out the box again, the one from Mom's storage. I handed it to him. He looked down at it, then back at me. I thought you were keeping it. I changed my mind. He opened it slowly, lifted out the photo of our family, and stared at it. She used to bring that picture with her every time we moved, he said. She said it was proof that we were better than how we turned out. I didn't know what to say to that. I just stood there while he stared down at everything we hadn't said for years. You know what the worst part was? He asked. I believed her. You still can. He closed the box, carried it to the passenger side of his car, and set it down gently like it might shift something inside him if he didn't. I'm going to keep writing, he said. But not to you. For me. Good. He didn't hug me. I didn't ask for one. He got in his car, started the engine, and waited a few seconds before pulling away. I stood there long after he was gone, watching an empty street in a city that no longer felt unfamiliar. Some things never get fixed, but they stop breaking you when you stop running from them. That was the day I finally chose to stay, and I have never needed to run again.